Excuse me, you need to move. Now. Flight attendant Brenda Cole's voice cut through the first-class cabin of Aeronation Flight AN829 like broken glass. She planted herself in the aisle, finger hovering inches from David Sterling's face. "This is my assigned seat, ma'am, 2A, David said evenly. "First class, Chicago to Miami." He held up his boarding pass and status card. Calm, precise. The way a man sounds when billion-dollar meetings are just part of Tuesday. Brenda snatched the pass without really looking. Anyone can print a pretty ticket. This gentleman paid full fare for first class. She jerked a thumb toward a middle-aged man in an expensive suit behind her. "Finally, someone with backbone," the man announced for the whole cabin to hear. "These people always try to sneak up here. Security's gotten too lax." The word struck a place David knew too well. For a heartbeat, he wasn't a CEO. He was 7, watching his father mop an airport concourse while travelers stepped around him like furniture. "Dad, why do they treat us different?" "Because some folks think your worth is your skin," Miguel Sterling had said, rough hands gentle on his son's shoulders. "One day you'll show them it's what you do." David set the boarding pass on the armrest. Inside his briefcase sat documents that could steer the future of commercial aviation. In front of him stood people who saw only the color of his skin. "Perhaps call your supervisor," he said calmly. "We can resolve this quickly." Brenda smiled without warmth. "I don't need permission. Crew has discretionary authority. You can move to coach or airport police can remove you." He didn't argue. He slid a single embossed card across the armrest. "Call this number." The supervisor arrived from the galley, Monica Banks, headset slung low. She took the card, glanced down, and the color drained from her face. "David Sterling," it read. "Chief Executive Officer, Sterling Aerospace Holdings." "Mr. Sterling," Monica started, her voice careful. "If there's been any confusion—" "Put it on speaker," David said, nodding at the number. "Aeronation Ops will want to weigh in." Monica tapped the phone. 2 rings. "Aeronation Operations, this is Karen Zhou." "Karen," David replied, voice steady. "David Sterling. I'm on Flight 829, Seat 2A. We have a situation. A crew member is attempting to remove me from my assigned seat despite valid documentation." A beat of silence. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. "Understood, Mr. Sterling. Captain Carter, we need you to return to gate immediately. Remove involved crew from duty pending review." In the cockpit, Captain Lisa Carter acknowledged over the interphone. "Copy, returning to gate." The cabin fell into a hush. The hum of the engines seemed to defer to the voice on speaker. The suited man scoffed. "You can't be serious." Janet Williams, a civil rights attorney in 3D, lifted her phone, recording for documentation, not for clout. 2 rows back, flight attendant Michael Rodriguez kept his posture neutral, the way people do when they've seen something too many times and want it to stop. What the cabin didn't know was that David wasn't just any passenger. As the largest private investor in Aeronation, he'd been quietly observing how the airline handled difficult situations. Today, he got his answer. The aircraft eased off the taxiway and rolled back toward the terminal. David's screen lit with names he ignored: board chair, investor relations, a reporter who never called unless she already knew the answer. He kept his gaze level on the aisle and felt the plane glide to the gate. The door opened. The station manager stood with 2 customer care reps and an airport police officer who looked relieved to be present as a witness, not a weapon. Monica's headset crackled. She listened, then turned to Brenda. "Operations has removed you from duty pending investigation," she said quietly. "Please surrender your badge and accompany customer care." Brenda stared, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "You're kidding." "Badge, please," Monica repeated, soft but firm. "We'll debrief in the office." Brenda unclipped it with unsteady hands and set it on the nearest flat surface, David's tray table. The officer didn't touch her. He didn't need to. Consequences can walk without handcuffs. Monica faced the suited passenger next. "Sir, due to your comments that contributed to a disruptive situation, you'll be rebooked on the next flight. Customer care will assist." He started to protest, then saw the phones angled his direction. He closed his mouth and followed the agents down the aisle. Janet lowered her phone. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "if you need witness statements, I'm happy to provide mine. Clear audio, timestamps." "Thank you," he replied. "I'll have my office reach out." Michael Rodriguez stepped forward like a man stepping off a cliff. "Sir, I've seen situations like this. I didn't feel safe speaking up." He swallowed. "I should have." "You're speaking now," David said, offering a card. "There's a protected channel for employees who want safer systems. Use it." Monica rechecked the manifest, then returned the boarding pass to David with both hands. "On behalf of Aero Nation," she said, "I'm sorry. We'll report directly to Ops and Corporate. Can we get you anything?" "A fair process," he said. "For everyone." The jet bridge pulled away. The door sealed. The captain's voice returned. "Thank you for your patience. We'll be underway shortly." David's phone buzzed once more. A single message from Dad. Saw an alert. "Proud of you, mijo." He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath until he let it go. Earlier that day, he'd noticed the way a cleaner in the lounge massaged her wrist between bins. "Cart heavy?" he'd asked. She smiled and nodded. He made a note to ask Aero Nation about ergonomic gear for ground staff. Power, used right, fixes what most people never see. That night, David sat in his Miami hotel room, city lights reflecting off the ocean. His phone buzzed with calls from Aero Nation's board chair, but he ignored them. Instead, he opened his laptop and began typing. The email was simple. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow. We need new policies, real training, and public accountability. This ends now." Within hours, replies flooded in. The board chair called directly. "David, we can fix this quietly." "No," David cut him off. "Quiet is how we got here. We do this right, or I pull my investment and make this story public." The next morning brought action. Aero Nation announced an immediate review of all customer service protocols. The Department of Transportation opened an investigation. The story began spreading online, but David stayed focused on solutions, not publicity. Back in Chicago, Monica faced the hardest conversation of her career. She sat across from HR, her 20-year service record spread between them like evidence at a trial. "Monica," the HR director said gently, "help us understand what happened." She'd practiced this moment, but the words still came hard. "I made assumptions instead of following procedure. I let a passenger's complaint override my training." She paused, hands trembling slightly. "I've seen situations like this before and looked the other way. I can't pretend that didn't influence my decisions." The union representative, Sarah Jackson, had flown for 30 years. She'd seen careers end over smaller mistakes, but something in Monica's honesty struck her differently. "The company offers retraining programs," Sarah said carefully. "Full pay, 6 months of intensive customer service and bias awareness training. It's not punishment, it's a chance to do better." Monica looked up, surprised. "You'd give me that chance?" "Monica," the HR director replied, "we're all learning from this. The question is, are you willing to do the work?" Meanwhile, Brenda sat in her own review meeting, but her responses were different. "I was protecting the cabin," she insisted. "Anyone could have printed that boarding pass." The silence in the room was telling. "Brenda," her supervisor said finally, "we have security footage of you taking less than 3 seconds to examine his documentation. Our policy requires thorough verification. You didn't follow it." "I used my judgment." "Your judgment assumed a black man couldn't afford first class. That's not judgment. That's bias." The termination letter was dated that Thursday. Due process, they called it. Accountability, David would have said. Janet Williams met with federal investigators the following week. As a civil rights attorney, she knew the importance of precise documentation. Her testimony was clear. Times, words, actions. No drama, just facts. The crew member made no attempt to verify through their system, she stated. The decision appeared to be based solely on the passenger's complaint and assumptions about who belonged in first class. Michael Rodriguez gave his statement separately. He'd been flying for 8 years and had witnessed similar incidents before, but never one where someone fought back effectively. "I wanted to speak up," he admitted to the investigator, "but I was scared. Scared of confrontation, scared of getting written up for interfering. After seeing how Mr. Sterling handled it, calm, professional, documented, I realized staying silent doesn't protect anyone." The investigator nodded. "Would you be willing to participate in new training programs if they're developed?" "Yes," Michael replied immediately. "We need better tools for these situations, scripts, procedures, backup when things get heated." 3 months later, the changes were real. Aero Nation implemented new procedures. Any seat reassignment required supervisor approval and system documentation. Flight attendants received updated training focused on verification before action. The training wasn't just videos and handbooks. They used real scenarios, practiced difficult conversations, learned when to escalate and when to de-escalate. In one session, trainer Amanda Foster played an angry passenger demanding someone be moved. The flight attendant trainees practiced responses. "Sir, I understand your concern. Let me verify the seating situation through our system. I'll need to speak with my supervisor before making any changes. Your comfort is important, but all passengers with valid tickets have the right to their assigned seats." Simple words, but they worked. The training gave crew members confidence to do the right thing, even under pressure. David's team tracked the results. Discrimination complaints dropped significantly. Customer satisfaction scores improved. More importantly, crew members reported feeling more supported in difficult situations. The company published their first transparency report 6 months later. It wasn't flashy, just honest numbers about complaints, resolutions, and changes made. The report acknowledged past failures and outlined ongoing improvements. "We got this wrong," the CEO wrote in the introduction. "This report is our commitment to doing better, measured in actions, not words." The new policies became standard practice. A simple rule: verify first, assume nothing. Crew members received backup when passengers became aggressive about seating assignments. Supervisors were trained to support their staff in maintaining fairness. Monica completed her retraining program and returned to duty as a senior flight attendant. Her first day back, she was assigned to the same route as Flight 829. She checked the manifest twice, verified every premium passenger personally, and made sure every interaction reflected the lessons she'd learned. A year later, she wrote David a letter. "I failed you and our passengers that day. The training you made possible taught me that authority means protecting people, not controlling them. I'm doing better work now because of your courage to speak up." Brenda's termination was final, but it wasn't the end of her story. The airline's employee assistance program connected her with career counseling. She found work in customer service with a hotel chain, where her training included extensive bias awareness education. 6 months into her new job, she encountered her own Flight 829 moment. A guest questioned whether a black family belonged in the hotel's premium suites. This time, Brenda's response was different. "Let me verify your reservation immediately," she told the family with genuine warmth, then turned to the complaining guest. "Sir, all our guests deserve to be treated with respect. If you have concerns about your own accommodation, I'm happy to help with that separately." The difference was stark. Training had taught her to pause, verify, and protect, rather than assume and react. Word of these changes spread through the industry. Other airlines began reviewing their own policies. Flight attendant associations shared stories and best practices. The transformation wasn't immediate or complete, but it was real. Michael Rodriguez became a training coordinator, helping develop the scenarios that prepared crew members for difficult situations. He never forgot the weight of staying silent when he should have spoken up. "The hardest part of the job isn't dealing with difficult passengers," he told new trainees. "It's finding the courage to do the right thing when it would be easier to look away." His training sessions included a simple exercise. If you saw what happened on Flight 829, what would you do differently? The answers revealed how much had changed. New flight attendants spoke confidently about intervening, documenting, and escalating when necessary. David chose to focus on lasting change rather than temporary attention. He declined most media interviews, preferring to work behind the scenes on policy improvements. The real measure of success, he knew, wouldn't be headlines. It would be the absence of future incidents. A year after Flight 829, he found himself back at O'Hare, walking through the same corridors his father had cleaned for decades. He stopped at the industrial door Miguel had described, now secured with an electronic keypad. Pressing his palm against the cool metal, David felt the weight of generational change. Aeronation's improvements were measurable. Complaint resolution times decreased, discrimination reports dropped significantly, and customer satisfaction scores reached new highs. The Department of Transportation closed their investigation with recommendations that became industry best practices. But the most meaningful changes were smaller, more personal. Janet Williams joined Aeronation's Diversity Advisory Board, helping ensure that settlements and policies address systemic issues rather than just individual incidents. The airline developed new technology to support fair policies, a simple app feature that required documentation and approval for any seat changes. It wasn't revolutionary, but it worked. When situations arose, crew members had clear procedures to follow. A year later, David returned to AN 829. Same route, same aisle, a different current under everything. The attendant scanned his pass and said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Sterling," like the words reached him and didn't just pass by. A family moved past. Mother, father, a kid with braids and airport eyes that take in everything. She stared at the big seats. "Mom, do people get in trouble for sitting here?" Her mother squeezed her hand. "People get treated fair," she said. "That's the rule." David settled into 2A and opened an email from Ops. "We've added 2 lines to the training. Assume paid presence, verify via manifest, and escalate to Ops, not ego. Staff feedback is strong." He replied with a single word. "Good." Halfway through the flight, Captain Carter left the cockpit on a quick break and stopped by 2A. "I wanted to say something I didn't get to say that day," she said. "Crew authority exists to protect safety, not to police who belongs. Thank you for making that clearer, for us and for the public." "Thank you for turning back," David said. "That was the hard part." "It was the necessary part," she replied, and returned to the flight deck. When the plane landed, he texted his father a photo of the headrest cover in 2A. No caption. He didn't need one. A minute later, Miguel replied with a picture from years ago. A mop leaning against a bucket, a boy's small hand inside a larger one. Under it, 5 words. "We measured the right thing." 2 years after Flight AN 829, David Sterling stood in his father's old break room at O'Hare Airport. The fluorescent lights still buzzed the same way, but now he wore a visitor's badge that read, "Distinguished Guest Speaker." "You nervous, mijo?" Miguel asked, straightening his son's tie. At 75, his father had traded his janitor's uniform for a guest speaker's badge, but his hands still moved with the careful precision of a man who'd spent decades doing important work. "Terrified," David admitted. "Speaking to Congress is one thing, speaking to the people who actually do the work. That's different." Through the doorway, he could see them gathering. Baggage handlers, gate agents, cleaning crews, mechanics. The people who kept airlines running while executives took credit. People like his father had been. "They don't want fancy speeches," Miguel said. "They want to know you remember where you came from." David nodded, then noticed something that made his breath catch. In the corner, an old mop bucket sat next to a supply closet, the same type his father had used for 30 years. "Dad, do you ever miss it? The work, I mean." Miguel followed his gaze. "I miss the simplicity," he said quietly. "Clean this, fix that, help someone." The results were immediate. You could see if you did good work. He paused. "Now everything you touch affects thousands of people. The weight is different." Before David could respond, a young woman appeared in the doorway. Miguel Santos, 23, with calloused hands and tired eyes that reminded David of his father at that age. "Mr. Sterling?" she said hesitantly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to thank you." David turned fully toward her. "For what?" Last month I was cleaning first class on a United flight. A passenger started yelling at me, saying I was taking too long, that people like me should work faster. Her voice wavered slightly. The flight attendant heard and came over. She didn't tell me to hurry up. She told the passenger to sit down and wait respectfully, or he could find another flight. Miguel's eyes glistened. David felt his throat tighten. The attendant said she'd seen a video about treating all airline employees with dignity. She said your story taught her that respect doesn't have job titles. Maria's voice grew stronger. No one ever stood up for me like that before. I went home and told my daughter that maybe things really can change. David extended his hand. What's your daughter's name? Isabella. She's 5. She wants to be a pilot someday. Tell Isabella that Mr. Sterling says the sky belongs to everyone who's brave enough to reach for it. Maria smiled, shook his hand with both of hers, and disappeared back into the corridor. Miguel squeezed his son's shoulder. Now you know why the work matters. The presentation went better than David expected. No PowerPoint slides, no corporate jargon, just stories. He told them about the day his father came home excited because a businessman had said, "Thank you," for cleaning up a spilled coffee. He talked about learning that dignity isn't something you earn, it's something you give and receive. Afterward, a mechanic named James raised his hand. "Mr. Sterling, that stuff you did on the plane, that was brave. But what about us? What happens when passengers treat us like we're invisible?" David thought of Maria, of his father, of every person who'd ever been made to feel small because of their job. "James, I learned something important that day on Flight 829. Power isn't about having the biggest title or the most money. Real power is about lifting others up when you have the chance. Every interaction is a choice. You can make someone feel valued, or you can make them feel invisible." He paused, looking around the room. The passenger who demanded I be moved, he had money, status, an expensive suit. But in that moment, he had no power at all. Because power without humanity is just noise. An older woman in the back spoke up. "Easy to say when you're a CEO, harder when you're afraid of losing your job." David nodded. "You're absolutely right. That's why companies need to change their policies, not just their training videos. Fear shouldn't be the price of earning a living." After the presentation, David walked through the terminal with his father. They passed the gate where Flight 829 used to depart, now reassigned to international routes. "Dad, can I ask you something I've always wondered about?" "Anything, mijo. All those years when passengers ignored you, or worse, how did you not get bitter?" Miguel stopped walking. Around them, travelers rushed past with their urgent destinations, their important phone calls, their full lives. "You want to know the truth?" "I did get bitter. Some days I went home angry at the world, angry at people who looked through me like I was furniture." He smiled sadly. "Your mother, God rest her soul, she'd listen to me complain. Then she'd say something I'll never forget." "What was that?" "She'd say, 'Miguel, their blindness doesn't make you invisible. Their rudeness doesn't make you small. You are who you choose to be, not who they decide you are.'" Miguel's voice cracked slightly. "I chose to be a man who did honest work with dignity. Whether they saw me or not was their loss, not mine." David felt tears threatening. "Is that why you never wanted me to be angry about what happened on the plane?" "No, mijo. I wanted you to be angry. Anger can fuel change, but I didn't want anger to consume you. There's a difference between righteous fury and poisonous rage. You chose the right one." They walked in comfortable silence until they reached the security checkpoint. David's flight back to Chicago was boarding soon. "One more thing, Dad. That night after the incident, you texted me that you were proud. But I need you to know everything I did that day, everything I've done since, I learned from watching you. You were my first example of quiet strength." Miguel embraced his son tightly. "You know what makes me proudest? Not that you stood up for yourself. That was good, but not surprising. You've always been brave. What makes me proud is that you stood up for everyone who'll come after you. That family on your anniversary flight, that little girl who asked if people get in trouble for sitting in first class. She'll never have to wonder if she belongs somewhere. That's your real legacy. As David walked toward his gate, he passed a young black pilot in uniform, probably mid-20s, confidently striding toward the crew lounge. The pilot nodded respectfully as they passed. David smiled, thinking of Maria's 5-year-old daughter Isabella, dreaming of flying planes. Maybe she'd be walking these same corridors in 20 years, captain's stripes on her shoulders, never having to prove she belonged in any seat, any cockpit, any sky. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Sterling, my name is Captain Sarah Jackson. I'm a pilot for Delta. 3 years ago, I was a scared flight attendant who watched your video and learned how to find my voice. Today, I flew my first Boeing 777 as pilot in command. Thank you for showing us what courage looks like." David smiled and typed back, "Captain Jackson, congratulations. The sky was always yours. I'm glad you claimed it." As his plane lifted off from O'Hare, David looked down at the sprawling terminal below, thinking about all the quiet heroes working their shifts, the mechanics ensuring safe flights, the cleaners maintaining dignity in unglamorous work, the gate agents helping nervous travelers find their way. His father was right. The work was never really about one plane, one seat, or one moment of injustice. It was about building a world where everyone's child could look up at the sky and see possibility, not limits. And that work, David realized, was just beginning. If this story hit home, if you've ever been told you don't belong, share your experience in the comments. Your words might be the light someone else needs tomorrow. Subscribe and hit the bell if you want more high-stakes stories of quiet, power-changing loud systems. New episodes every week. And tell me where you're watching from. Chicago, Miami, Lagos, London, Kingston, Toronto. Our community spans the globe, and your voice matters here.